Okay, everyone. So for the sake of time, I am going to get started. Let me introduce myself. I am Lisa Brancheau. I'm the Assistant Director of Global and Experiential Education here at the School of Business, and I manage all of our elective overseas opportunities, be it short-term study abroad or long-term study abroad. So today we're going to talk to you about short-term study abroad programs, and what we're going to do is have a quick There it works. Okay. So we are going to have each of the faculty members who are leading summer short-term programs present on their opportunity, and then we'll open it up for program-specific questions where you can address the professor with any questions you might have particular to that program. From there, I'll talk briefly about the short-term opportunities that are run through our exchange partner institutions. And then we'll talk briefly about long-term study abroad and then some final steps that you can take to get your application in by that February 15th deadline, and then what the process is for those study abroad opportunities. So I am wearing a mic, as will all of the faculty members, because we are recording this session. So for any of your classmates who weren't able to attend but really wanted to learn more about the programs, you can tell them that we will be sharing a link of this presentation on all the different program web pages and send it out to students, so you can always refer back to it. But first off, I think it's important to say, why should you study abroad? So there's multiple reasons why study abroad is really going to help you not only bring depth to your graduate program, but also really differentiate yourself in the job market. So you're getting exposure to different regions, maybe regions where you already have areas of expertise and you're looking to kind of build more academic expertise in those areas, or you just want to kind of introduce yourself to a new country or perhaps a new topic, a new way of doing business. And so it also, enhances some other skills that you're going to be using in a professional environment, such as problem solving, flexibility. All are things which I know future employers really look for. But then you're also really expanding your global network. So these opportunities are a really great way to kind of see the diversity of GW. You're taking classes with students from other graduate programs. At some of these programs, you're also taking classes with students from around the world, from different partner institutions through the short-term exchanges. So it really does help you kind of globalize your degree and your academic environment by also advancing degree completion. So I know many of you, for graduate studies, aren't necessarily first priority. You have other things that you're competing with, and so these short-term programs are a really great way for you to earn credits in a short amount of time, and so you're kind of getting quicker and quicker to that goal of graduation. So with that, we have our 5 faculty members who are going to speak on their particular programs. We're going to start with Professor Cook, who is joining us remotely via Skype. So he's joining us to talk a bit about his program, Strategic Management in the EU. So Professor Cook, we're ready when you are.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. Greetings from Wisconsin. I'm really happy that Lisa was able to organize this program for us and to welcome you all tonight to listen to our presentation. I'd also like to thank Robert Gates. Rob is an MBA from last year's program, who volunteered to participate from in Q&A today, and also to be available during the reception to answer some more questions that you might have about my program. My program is entitled Strategic Management in the EU, and it includes, in terms of classes, the capstone course in that 6286 or 6288, and an elective from my department on corporate strategy and European Union, SNPP 6297. Because the focus of my department is on strategic management, that's really what we'll be working on during our time together during the first summer session. Strategic management involves designing competitive business and corporate strategies that take advantage of the firm's external environment. And we'll work through those strategies and how the firm executes those strategies, particularly in the EU, through the use of case studies and lectures and our company visits in Paris, We'll have some new developing skills and diagnosing external opportunities and challenges, and how to formulate strategies that then will take advantage of those forces and the firm's capabilities. In particular, we're going to emphasize company strategies who are U.S. firms or EU firms or Asian firms who are doing business in the European Union. Why the European Union? The EU is the largest trading partner with the U.S. right now. We're in the midst of a transatlantic trade and investment partnership. That's the TTIP is being negotiated right now between the U.S. and the EU to lower tariff barriers, so that will increase foreign direct investment and trade between the two regions. It's very interesting. The EU also is a lot more aggressive in their competitive regulatory strategy. That is, the EU Competition Commission has fined Intel, Microsoft, Procter & Gamble, and others on their competitive strategy practices in the U.S. They're finding them to be a little too aggressive sometimes. Google right now is in the crosshairs of the European Union regulators for some of its business practices. The right to be forgotten came out of the European privacy laws, and so right now you have the right to remove some of the links between yourself and some of the information that is on Google's website. We also find that the ECB is engaged in a high level of quantitative easing beginning in 2015, some $1 trillion of quantitative easing, which means the price of the euro is going down. So a trip to Europe this summer will be 15 to 20% less than where it was last summer. Sorry about that, Rob, but it will be much cheaper to be there this year. And why Paris and why France? Paris is the home of most of the European multinational headquarters, or at least the largest number of them in Europe. The French also are very good at big science. If you've taken a metro today, you've been on an Alstom train, which is a French company, recently purchased by GE, but still a French company at this time. If you flew, there was a 50% chance you were on an Airbus airplane. That's one of the visits we make each year is Airbus. And so what we find is, of course, Paris is wonderful any time of year, but in the summertime it's particularly great. So there's a good reason for us to be focusing our attention on the EU and France and Paris. In regard to the program schedule, we have 5 weeks of classes in Washington before we go abroad. So from May 18th to June 17th on campus, on Mondays and Wednesdays from 6 until 9, we'll have classes on campus. And then we'll move on to the Paris schedule at that point. In Paris, we will be starting our program off on Sunday night with an opening dinner. But we'll begin the formal classroom portion on Monday, June 22nd, where we'll be hosted at our partner university in Paris, the Institut pour l'éthique. And that first day, we'll have companies come to us. In the past, we've had companies such as Hewlett-Packard, the large French bank BNP Paribas, Citrix, we had L'Oreal, Starbucks, and then some private venture companies, private equity companies come in to describe the differences in EU and US financial markets. For the rest of the 4 days of that week, we'll be taking field trips to companies. So once again, on the first day, companies come to us and we recover from jet lag. The rest of the week, we'll be traveling together to various companies by metro. Right now, I'm estimating the Tuesday schedule. We'll see Marriott Europe and Deloitte France and have an alumni reception on that Tuesday. Wednesday, we'll be working with General Electric, which we were fortunate enough to be working with last year as they executed the Alstom acquisition. There will also be a field trip to AXA, which is the largest insurance company in France and one of the highest performing insurance companies in the world. On Thursday, we'll see Airbus and probably be able to take an afternoon field trip for some culture to Musée d'Orsay. And on Friday, we'll talk to Dassault and look at their 3D printing business and close with Microsoft France and then a closing there that evening. So those are the kinds of companies that we're likely to see this summer. I have and Rob has a full copy of this presentation he can hand out to people who are interested in it. I'd just like to close quickly with some brief bio information for myself and Dr. Deborah Smith-Cook. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Strategic Management and Public Policy. I have a doctorate in strategic management, an MBA, and an engineering degree. I think that I started working in study abroad in 1991 was my first trip. That was actually the first business school program that was offered as a study abroad. I developed the GWSB Paris Study Center in 2001, and that's been ongoing for the last 14 years in terms of classes there. And I set up this program, Strategic Management in the EU, beginning in about 2004. So my interests are in strategy, corporate strategy, and European Union, and how the companies there execute their strategy and how that is different from how we do it here in the U.S. My co-lead in the last week in Washington and all the time we're in Paris is Dr. Deborah Smith-Cook. She holds a doctorate in strategic management, an MBA, and an undergraduate degree in French and English. She is formerly a tenured faculty member of strategy at GW, but now works for the Securities and Exchange Commission. One of the things she undertook in her career was a Fulbright to INSEAD, which is a business school just outside of Paris, and she's fluent in French, which is very valuable on our program. So that's my 5-minute talk. I guess we have 5 minutes for some Q&A. But once again, Rob will be passing out the full details of the presentation. If you have any questions, you can always email me. All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Professor Cook. So at this time, are there any students with questions? You can raise your hand, and then I'll repeat it back so Professor Cook can hear. Yes.
I'm just curious and wondering what, so as you can be offered as either 3 or 6 credits, and how those look different. So you choose it just one of the 3 or 6 credit.
Okay, so the question was if it's a 3 or 6 credit option. So it's 3 through 6. So you could actually have it as a 3, 4.5, or 6 credit option. And Professor Cook can talk a bit more about that.
Right. In the past, I've had a variety of students who've undertaken the program. If a student has already taken a capstone course in their own program, they'll end up enrolling in the 3 credit option. If they have not taken the capstone course, then they can either do the 4.5, which would be for the GMBA and for PMBAs who did not start this year. And a 6 credit option is available for students who MBAs who started in the fall of 2014, and they have a new capstone course in that program. And so I worked with the dean's office and my department here to be able to offer the capstone for each of those programs. So you have a 3.0, 4.5, or 6 point, depending on your program and what courses you've completed.
Did that answer your question? So you have options. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. Rob, did you want to share a little bit about your time on the program, briefly?
Yeah. I will quickly say that in my time here, I did 3 study abroads, including my CAP trip. This was by far my best trip, and it's kind of funny because this is the trip I least wanted to do. France just didn't seem very interesting to me. It seemed kind of, it was a developed economy. It didn't have a whole lot of, things that I thought I could gain from it. Seeing the interaction between the classroom and the trip, and this was where I saw it the most, actually. And I've been to Dubai, I've been to China, and France was my 3rd. It's just very interesting to go out and talk to these companies. You're sitting with Microsoft Paris and you're in France, and you're talking about Edward Snowden and how it affects their business in France. You're talking to Airbus about how the pilots have to interact with all the safety things that they're installing into their jets, and how they're trying to balance making the jets more and more safety, but not taking away the the pilot interaction with GE, I mean, we couldn't even meet in our conference room because Jeff Emlett was there closing the Alstom deal. It was extremely exciting. It was fun. And just as a final plug, I mean, both Dr. Cooks were outstanding. They're phenomenal. They put a lot of thought, effort, and passion into this trip. And, you know, I don't think you can go wrong. I'm actually living in Philadelphia now. I came down here on my spare time just to speak about this because this was a great, great trip. And it was by far the trip that exceeded my expectations the most. So I would encourage you to ask me questions later about the student experience. I will be here for the reception. And then, reach out to Dr. Cook as well because I learned a great deal from him, and I'm passionate about strategy, but he was, one of my best. Sorry, I'm looking at Stuart back there too. I took a trip with him to China too, so it was a great trip. I just, I encourage you to take a real serious look at this if you're not already.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Rob, for doing that. Did you have another question?
Yes. I was just wondering, I know with some of the programs you have to, the program organizer would have to take care of your lodging and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking at this online now. So the student is responsible for taking care of all of that, or how does that work?
So the question, Professor Cook, is regarding lodging. And so maybe if you can talk a bit about how you arrange lodging for the Paris program.
I'm sorry, Lisa, I didn't actually hear that question.
Yeah, the question was about lodging in Paris, and he was saying since the lodging's not arranged by us, you can talk a bit about how you manage the lodging for Paris.
Right. So each individual is really on their own for making their transportation and lodging arrangements for Paris. People have different budgets and different backgrounds and different frequent flyer points and hotel points. So what I do is give you a geographic region. There's a 6th arrondissement in Paris. I'll tell you where the classroom is and where we'll start each morning at a metro stop and ask you to be within a 10-minute walking distance from that location. About half the people have picked hotels, and about half the people have done Airbnb with some of their other classmates in the class. And it's worked out really, really well, so people can decide when they want to arrive and when they want to leave. I give you the opening date and the closing date, and you sort of organize your schedule around there. I also start providing lots of information, and the participants always share information on airfares and lodging, et cetera, as soon as we get the approval for the program to be offered. Does that help?
Yes, yes. All right, so for the sake of time, we're going to move on to the next speaker, which is Professor Mark Hyman, who's going to talk about his program that's going to China. And so, Professor Cook, thank you very much for joining us. Students who have further questions are encouraged to write him via email or approach Rob during the reception to ask any questions.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Rob.
Do you want me to put this on?
Yes, if you could, because we're recording.
I forgot already.
Yes.
So I've decided that I'm going to Paris with Dr. Cook. That does sound wonderful. I'm also going to try to limit my remarks to 5 minutes, so I'm timing myself. The course that I'll be leading is a course in sport globalization and concerns the efforts of Western, primarily American professional sports leagues to export their product around the world. And we are going to be visiting a very intriguing market in China. Let me tell you a little bit about baseball and Asia. Baseball is widely played in Asia in some countries. South Korea, Taiwan. If you're a Baltimore Orioles fan, you know that the Orioles pitching staff would be much poorer without Wei-In Chen of Taiwan. And, of course, Japan. And within the next 5 or 6 years, we'll have our first Baseball Hall of Famer from Japan, Ichiro, the great Seattle and now New York Yankee player. But baseball is not widely played in China, which is unfortunate for Major League Baseball because there are a lot of heads that could be wearing a lot of baseball caps. in China. And Major League Baseball is alert to this and is making great efforts to try to introduce baseball to China in a way that is well received. There are a number of obstacles. Some of them are cultural. For instance, during the Cultural Revolution, baseball was not well regarded by the Chinese government. And it was viewed as Western, capitalistic, almost subversive. And people in China who were familiar with baseball, who were found to have baseball bats or playing the game, they could be in some jeopardy with the government. That persists to some degree. In addition, the infrastructure needed to support baseball at a grassroots level does not really exist in China. If you flew over China in a jet, as we will, you would see very few baseball diamonds. So that is a great challenge. So since the early 2000s, Major League Baseball has endeavored to introduce the game in a number of ways. They are in what to us would be middle schools, teaching the game. They've created what they call development centers, which are essentially high schools, where Major League Baseball is providing scholarships to promising young players. They go to school in a traditional setting in the morning. They play baseball in the afternoon. The objective is to create one Major League player from China. When that happens, there will be many people in China wearing licensed Major League Baseball merchandise. Major League Baseball has never partnered with a group like ours. We're going over to engage in a real consulting project. And we will deliver a real document to them with our input regarding how they can refine their strategy. They have spent a lot of money there. So far, some return, not a great return. And they are eager for our eyes and our insights into how they can increase fan engagement and ultimately, the Holy Grail, how they can produce that first Chinese baseball player. So that essentially is the project. We will start in Shanghai, where we will attend an event called the Roadshow, which is basically a traveling baseball festival. And we will get a sense of how the Chinese people react to this kind of spectacle. We will meet with some corporate partners of MLB in Beijing, rather in Shanghai. Then we will travel to Beijing. We will visit development centers, a college club program. They have baseball has college kids playing baseball in an organized fashion, is supporting them financially and with instruction. We will visit some of those. We will visit the Chinese Baseball Association, the government entity which controls baseball in China and allows Major League Baseball to sign players and bring them to the U.S. We will meet with NBA China, NFL China, the PGA Tour in China. So we'll get a global understanding of the obstacles and the opportunities for professional sport in China. There's a lot I can't say in 5 minutes. But I'd be happy to take your questions. I did a great job. Okay.
What are the in-class requirements?
Great question. We're going to meet on campus a minimum of 3 times. On the draft syllabus, I think I have 5 classes scheduled. Jim Small, the VP for Asia for MLB, will come visit us. There will be other guests. There's a very lengthy reading list. When we get to China, I'm sorry, did that answer your question? Okay. Anyone else? Yes. Why is it not 6 credits? Great question. Lisa, why isn't it 6 credits?
That's actually a departmental decision. So between the faculty member and the department, it's based on contact hours and things that are
That's why. Let me just briefly say that my background, my career at GW is kind of a second act for me. I was a journalist for 30 years, including 10 years at Business Week covering the business of sports. I've covered Major League Baseball very closely during that time. And in fact, this trip is really the result of a relationship that grew out of my time covering Major League Baseball. I've led 2 other trips here at GW, one to Portland and Seattle that dealt with the sports, footwear, and apparel industries, one to LA that the centerpiece of which was a case study of the Los Angeles Dodgers, which had just been sold to a group led by Magic Johnson. But I mention all of that because 2 of my former students are here. I'm grateful to them for coming, and I know would be happy to talk to you. Hannes, raise your hand, please. And JP. So if you have questions about those experiences, I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you. Okay? Thank you.
So next up is we have a domestic program. Although some may argue that Walt Disney World is a world to itself. But we have Dr. Stuart Levy, who's going to be presenting on his trip looking at innovation in services.
Great. Thank you very much, Lisa. How are we all doing? Doing all right? Just hearing your presentation, Mark, I was wondering, what do we have in common, Disney World has in common with the world of sports? Definitely entertainment. I'm also thinking about sports stars, Michael Jordan, Eli Manning, Tom Brady, Mark McGuire. What do they all say? They'll say, I'm going to Disney World. I'm going to Disney World after they won. And that was actually a brainchild of Michael Eisner, the head of Disney's wife, who came up with that and said, wouldn't that be like a really neat phrase? So now they pay sports stars about $30,000 for saying, I'm going to Disney World after they win, and then actually going and making an appearance. So the difference between Tom Brady, Eli Manning, Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and you all is that they get paid for saying that, and you would have to pay to actually go on this. But otherwise, it'd be pretty much exactly the same. So I'm very enthusiastic, very passionate about this particular opportunity for a couple of reasons. One is my background has been in hospitality and tourism ever since graduating undergrad. I focused in hotel administration undergrad. I've worked in tour operating, hotel consulting, just all related to hospitality and travel. And this combines, obviously, my background in tour operating with study courses. And Rob, thanks for the plug before about China. I didn't lead the course. I assisted that course to kind of get my feet a little bit wet in the study abroad opportunity. I've just finished leading over winter break a course to Nassau, Bahamas, and Eleuthera, where we really focused on the customer experience, setting a festival called Junkanoo, and utilizing a number of methodologies that we're also going to be applying to this Disney course. This is a perfect time to go to Disney and to study Disney World and innovations, both service innovations as well as technological innovations. In 2013, they launched MyMagic Plus. Are any of you familiar with MyMagic Plus? I'm wearing both wristbands. It's not like I'm trying to be a superhero, underneath here and wearing a cool wristband. But these are MyMagic bands, which are part of the $1 billion technological innovation that Disney put in because they wanted to improve the visitor experience through personalization, through customization of customer visits. So we're going to be studying everything that MyMagic Plus does through the interactive website, mobile site. So part of this will be involved with technology, on your computer or mobile device. Some of it will be, and a lot of it will be, working on and learning about the customer experience at the parks and everything that goes into that, including service culture and the employee perspective, the HR perspective that obviously goes into the customer experience. So this, again, just started about a year and a half ago, and we'll have the opportunity to really audit, evaluate the experience utilizing MyMagic Plus. So this course is a blended learning course. We never actually meet here on campus. We'll have 3 days of distance learning, I believe soon after the spring semester ends. I think it's May 20th through the 22nd. We'll have courses online, so it'll be open, obviously, to everyone on campus as well as our distance learning students. Then we'll be in Florida, so Orlando, from the 21st to the 24th to the 31st of May, with 6 full days in the parks. We will be in the parks just about every day. We'll actually have a pass for 5 days in multiple parks. And we will be also studying, taking some workshops with Disney that are taught by Disney in leadership, in innovation, and in creativity. So it's also blended learning when we're down in Orlando. Just to finish up before I take any questions, I thought I'd give a list of a couple of benefits of taking this particular course. I think the first benefit is you're working on a project with Disney. Everyone knows of Disney, and it's really best-of-breed company. When you're talking with employers, you're always going to be able to talk about your experience in working on a project with Disney, as well as being such a best-in-breed company in services. I think you'll benefit from that. We'll be applying a lot of methods and tools, which I've used in other courses, such as the one in the Bahamas. Everything from social media monitoring, so you'll actually be utilizing Hootsuite. If any of you have used that before and getting your certification, that's going to be part of the course. We're also going to be doing mystery shopping, secret shopping. You'll be getting your certification from the Mystery Shopping Provider Association. We'll be learning about that methodology and applying it in the parks. We'll also be doing some interviews while we're down there as well as service mapping and blueprinting, which is a form of evaluating the experience and being able to report that experience to clients. A couple of other things as well. I mentioned the interactive workshops and field studies delivered by Disney, so we'll be learning right from them. I think it's a compelling destination in terms of timing, right after the semester ends, as well as from a cost perspective. It's going to be, I think, significantly less than a number of other courses. We've been able to keep the cost pretty low on that. And I encourage any of you who want to see the type of work that we did in the Bahamas, we formed a blog. Now the blog, students are still posting for their Bahamas course, but if you want to check out that blog, it's Junkanoo, Junkanoo 2015.blogspot.com. And you can kind of see some of the things that the students have been learning about.
Board.
Oh, okay, great. And I think that's about it. Happy to take any questions you may have. Yes?
How many students will be in the course?
We're planning on between 15 and 20 students will be in that course. I know a lot have already, I don't know if it's enrolled or pre-registered, so it's getting close, but happy to talk to you further about that.
Because this is here, does this not count as a removal firm?
No. For the MBA students that are on the old curriculum, this is the one opportunity that does not fulfill the globally focused syllabus. Even if they go to
Right?
The arguments are made.
Yes, hi.
Would this be a appropriate class for a first-year PMBA student?
For a first?
First-year PMBA student?
Absolutely. I think it's a great class for, doesn't matter if you're first year. Now, PMBA, so, you're right, so you're taking classes here. But, yeah, I think anyone that kind of likes the flexibility, as well, being able to not necessarily come here, but to spend a dedicated amount of time, 6 days, in Disney, and then do a number of things. It'll mainly be asynchronous in terms of the distance learning. So even those 3 days, there might be little parts, but you're not going to be required to be at your computer all day.
include Dr. Kristen Lamoureux, who will talk about her program, which is going to Myanmar.
Great. Thanks. Hi. Thank you. It's hard to follow both Dr. Levy and Professor Hyman, but happy to do so. Seems like the tourism program has a little bit of a monopoly right now in at least the last 15 minutes. So I'm Kristen Lamoureux. I'm a professor as well in the tourism program. Been at GW for about 18 years, and I've led this course for, I guess this is our 14th year. We do international consulting, and this year we're going to Myanmar. It's a 6-credit course. The way it works is we actually have class, real class on campus for 4 weeks right after graduation. Starts about May 18th, Tuesdays and Thursday nights. And then we go away for 2 weeks, and we come back and we have one more class. Usually the last class is either virtual or it's at a mutually agreed upon time, because I know a lot of people, when they go abroad, want to stay abroad for a little bit longer. And so we have a consensus. We come to an agreement on what the last class will be. But let me tell you a little bit about the course. So the course was designed years ago to give people a very, very real experience into what is international development, what is tourism development, what is small business management, environmental sustainability, and all of these aspects that come into play when we're talking about developing countries, and we're talking about tourism, and we're talking about economic development, gender equity, poverty alleviation, sustainability. We use tourism simply as a tool in order to achieve those things. And that's the way the class looks, and really our program looks at tourism. Tourism is a wonderful tool to help people create jobs where there aren't any, or protect natural environments, or create jobs for women, or other opportunities. And so what we're looking at is how we can use tourism in these places to be able to help the local population in some way. This is a real consulting assignment. Years ago, we decided that this was not going to be an academic activity. And so what we did was we actually, every year, find clients that are, quote unquote, paying. The way we ask them to pay is that they have to provide the lodging for the students and the local transportation. So what does that mean? It means that you as grad students will be paying for your tuition, of course, and there's nothing I can do about that, I'm sorry, and your flight over there. Once we get there, there's very little cost to the student because the client is actually paying for the lodging, many of the meals, not all of the meals, but many of the meals, and local transportation. Why do we require this? Because we want them to be as indebted to the project as we are. So you have to bring a lot of intellectual experience, a lot of work, a lot of creativity, a lot of innovation, and they have to actually supply some sort of consulting agreement. And so what we do is we start from the very first class negotiating the statement of work with the client. Once we negotiate a statement of work, the students of the class do that. We spend the rest of the time here in Washington doing a lot of background research on the topic. And then we get there and we present an inception presentation right away. The very next day, we get there on a Sunday, Monday morning, we're presenting an inception presentation, which is basically an overview of what we know. Then we spend the next 2 weeks either proving or disproving what we think we know, meeting with stakeholders in small group environments, trying to address the problem that's at hand. And then at the end, we make a presentation to the client and whoever they choose to invite. It's usually fairly high level. We are actually, this year, we're the guest of the Minister of Tourism and Hotels for the country of Myanmar, who coincidentally is a graduate of the Master of Tourism program about 25 years ago. So he's found us, came back, and he came back here to GW a few years ago to make a presentation, and we've been talking. And one of the things that he's really interested in is responsible tourism. He's very worried about Myanmar becoming another Vietnam or Cambodia with everything that's happened. And so he's really looking at how can we create a more responsible, sustainable tourism opportunity. So we'll be focusing specifically on Inlay Lake in that area and looking at kind of an alternative type of tourism and how might that develop to create jobs, et cetera, for the local people and preserve the culture. If you've ever seen They call them the knee boats. The guys kind of use their foot to paddle through the lake. This is this area. So it's really deep culture, beautiful place. And as I said, we'll be doing the final presentation once we leave, as we're getting ready to leave, and it'll be to, members of the cabinet, the national cabinet, as well as the heads of the tourism sector, the hotel union, the restaurant union, et cetera. So it's usually fairly intense. To be honest, students don't usually sleep the night before the presentation. Actually, I don't usually sleep before the presentation. I keep saying every year, this is not going to be the year I do an all-nighter with the students, but every year it happens. That's great, fine. But then we come back and we write up our findings and do a report. I teach the class here in Washington, very focused on how to do consulting, how to actually be a consultant, how to create a statement of work, how to negotiate, how to budget, how to market yourself, et cetera. But then once we get out in the field, I do very little teaching. It's a team activity. The group has to actually pick their team members, their leader, their team leaders, their project leader, and they're negotiating with the client, et cetera. And so what does that mean? That means sometimes national television calls and says, can you do an interview? And that's going to be, the team leader on national television trying to explain what we're doing. Or it could be the final presentation or whatever. One aspect that I do insist on for every project is we work with a local university. I feel it's really important to work with a local university for two reasons. One is they know the culture and the system better than we can ever, and so they're great. Usually, like in this case, they'll also be our translators. And secondly, I think it's really important to leave capacity in the country that we're visiting. And so every time we do this, we find that what we leave with the local students is equally as important and something that's that creates opportunities for them in the future. So that's kind of the project in a nutshell, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about this project. And we only take 16 students. Because the client is paying for lodging and food, we have 16 slots. So, any question? Yeah?
I know we have to set up an interview with you. Is that prior to the deadline?
Yes. Mm-hmm. So go ahead and apply, and then send me an email to set up the interview. The only exception on the interviews, if you've already been my student in a class, you don't have to do an interview, because theoretically I would have talked to you enough times. But otherwise, you do need an interview. Any other questions? Great, thank you so much.
Okay, now we're going to hear from our last professor, Dr. Robert Weiner, who's going to talk about his program to the UK.
Good evening. Well, as Professor Hyman might say, I'm the closer. I'm here to throw a few fastballs, hopefully 100-mile-an-hour fastballs, to let you guys go home and not go into extra innings. Could you raise your hand if you are not from the business school here? Raise your hand. Okay, a few people not from the business school. Raise your hand if you're from the business school but not from the MBA program. Okay. Most of these programs are primarily aimed at the MBA program. This is a little different. This is the only program that we offer that's cross-listed between the business school and another part of the university. We tend to be very siloed here. This is cross-listed with the Trachtenberg School, and it's not by coincidence. This is a program on the interaction between business and government, which happens to be the main industry in Washington. It's not that tourism isn't important or paddle boating with your feet isn't important. Our main business here is contracting with the government. And that's the kind of students that historically have made up a big part of our group. We work on the interaction between business and government, but we don't do it here. We do it in two countries. We do it in Washington and we do it in London because we think that there's a lot to be learned here from our experience abroad. It's great. I'd love to go help people develop baseball in China, but it's not going to affect baseball here very much. Hopefully, we can learn something here from other people's experience. And I think I'm always, as the head of the International Business Department, I'm always a little uncomfortable that Americans are going somewhere to show other people how we do it. Our objective is to learn how other people do it so that we can bring some of the lessons back. So we have an interaction between two groups of students. Half our students typically are studying business, roughly of those equal split between MBA, Master of Science in Government Contracting, and then a few other master's programs in the business school. And the other half are studying public management, primarily MPA and MPP in the Trachtenberg School. And unlike the other programs, I'll be giving another spiel next week in the Trachtenberg School about the program, and then also people from the Elliott School, because we do a lot of development stuff too. So as part of studying the interaction between business and government, we have students studying business, working with students studying government in their teams for their projects. The idea is, if you're going to go in the rat race working with people from the other sector, why not start with the mouse race here? Also, unlike the other programs, this is 6 credits, and we don't build up to a study abroad and then we have one more token session or we shake hands. We come back here and apply some of our lessons abroad. So, for example, one of the sectors that we've studied abroad is defense. And the British approach to the private sector in defense is quite different from the US. And we talk about public-private partnerships in defense. Also in transportation. We tend to think of other countries as more state-oriented and the US as more private-oriented. In the United States, intercity passenger service has a 100% state monopoly called Amtrak. In the UK, 100% of the state operators, actually now only 90%, are private. We go and talk to people and hear about the experience of the UK with privatization of passenger rail. Then we come back and we have a high official from Amtrak come and talk to us. And then the Amtrak guy tells us why the state is better. Well, we just heard something else. It's up to our students to put together the ideas abroad and hopefully bring them back here, whether it's government contracting, defense, whether it's transportation. We study sectors in which the state is important and which we think that makes sense for students who are coming to Washington to study in a school that is in the middle of a city that is very much private-public interaction. So that's the focus. One other more practical aspect, I don't like hot weather. The last place I would like to go when I'm here sweltering in Washington in May is to someplace that's even hotter. I won't mention any particular places that have come up so far, but almost all of them. I'd like to go someplace nice and cool. And guess what? The typical high temperature in London at this time of year is about 22 degrees C, which is about 70 degrees here. London has terrible weather most of the year, but in the summer it's been nice. And we have a couple of students from last year, one here already and one who hopefully will show up in time for the reception to talk about the weather. We do a mixture of tourism, and this is not a tourism program. The tourism activities are for cultural enrichment, for fun. I brought here some handouts so you can see exactly what we did last year. We do roughly the same year from year to year. Do some tourist activities. We have students who go find out about how people feel about the public and private sector by sitting in pubs and talking to people, rather than going around in a little pontoon boat by themselves. If you really want to go punting, we go to the Cambridge University, and you can self-hire a punt, or you can pay one of those young guys with big muscles to punt you along the little river there. In terms of our accommodations, London is frightfully expensive. And we provide your lodging, and we provide cheap lodging in a central location, but it's very Spartan. We stay in dormitories, and so if you really need a television in your room, you have to rent one, or you have to go on the Orlando program, one of the programs that provides TVs in your room. And so our approach is quite different. One thing that we do that is generally neglected in business school is the role of politics. We don't talk much about politics. Yet politics is central not only to the government, but also the interactions between government and business, and we work much more on the political dimension than you would in a class here, and we have much better context. I can't get into Congress here, and first of all, I live in the D.C., so I don't have a congressman, but I can't get people who are elected members of Congress. We go inside Parliament, and we have members of Parliament talking to us. And last year, we had MPs, basically people from the House of Commons talk to us, and we also went to the House of Lords, and we have some connections with various lords and baroness who took us around last year. And so we go inside Parliament and get a sense of the political dimension of business-government interaction. And we tend, in places like universities here, business school tracking to spend all our time on technical stuff. We have plenty of technical stuff in the course. We meet after we come back, and we meet once a week for 9 weeks on campus, and so we do the regular old reading. We have an exam, and so if you really want kind of an abbreviated experience where you're going to get up to bat a few times, either hit a few home runs or strike out, this may not be the program for you. This is more of a conventional course. We take our book learning here, and we take it to the street learning there, and we try to put it together. Some of the assignments, I have all the details here. The assignments ask you to try to put together what you've learned here and there. I think I may have used up my 5 minutes. Thanks.
Any questions?
Questions? Yes?
The focus of, like you said, you do work with like on defense and other topics. What is the focus, and how do you, I mean, this may be too in-depth, but how you apply to maybe other industries?
So yeah, so we do industries in which public-private interaction is important. The most of most interest to the students here, it depends on what students, are things like defense, energy, transport, health. We go to hear about the National Health Service. We go to a GW alum from the Elliott School who's a high advisor of the National Health Service. In the UK, all health is, in the public sector, free from at a point of contact. You get anything for free. Yet the National Health Service has received tremendous amount of criticism, mostly in presidential election years, from the U.S. saying they have bad health service there. And so we go to talk to somebody who comes from here, but who works there. And we have a number of people there who are very knowledgeable about the difference between the systems here. And we actually do it as part of a social activity. We go in the evening and we drink Pimm's, which is a cultural activity in itself. Not that any of you would be under the drinking age or anything like that. Any other questions? All right. If anybody else wants to ask me or any of the students, we'll be here during the reception.
All right, and there's also handouts available here that have been provided for some of the programs, so you'll be able to access those as well. What I'm going to do is we do have a number of short-term exchange programs which are offered by our partner institutions. So the School of Business has established exchange relationships with 17 different business schools around the world. And so these are schools that are offering both long-term and short-term study abroad opportunities to our students. So these short-term programs can be anywhere from 1 to 6 weeks, and they're open to all of their partner institutions. So you're getting a very diverse classroom with students from all over the world, and they're run entirely by the partner. So you're applying through us, through a nomination process. We then nominate you to the partner institution where you will go and enroll directly in that class. So we have 6 different opportunities that are offered by our partners. You can see most of them are, or half of them are in France, and I'll go through each of them very briefly, but if you have questions later on, I can certainly answer those for you. So first off, we have a partnership with the DEC Business School. They have a campus in Nice in southern France, which is also a great place to be in the summertime. And they're looking at Europeans in a global perspective. So it's a very broad course looking at the European economy, specifically focusing on luxury brands. So you will have some company visits as well as lectures from EDEC professors. You can see that it's a 3-credit program, and students will be in Nice for 2 weeks. Our second program in France is the Global Manager in Europe. So this is run by our partner ESSEC Business School, which is located in the suburbs of Paris. So it's about an hour-and-a-half-hour train ride from the center of Paris to their campus. But a lot of students choose to stay in Paris for the 3 weeks of the program. So you'll be in lectures all day. They have a variety of different faculty who are presenting on their area of expertise, kind of examining what it is to be a manager in the EU or global manager as well. And so there's lots of site visits accompanying it. This is a very selective program. So usually only around 35 students total are accepted. So they're getting students from all of their partner schools, which they have well over 35 of those. And so usually only 1 to 2 students from GW would actually get selected to participate in this program. But we usually send students every year, and they greatly enjoy it. Our last program in France is focusing on both arts management and luxury, the luxury industry. So this is run through Audencia School of Management, which is located about 2.5-hour train ride from Paris in Nantes. And that is a very flexible program. So for students who maybe only need 1.5 credits and want to do something overseas, you can just go for 1 week and get 1.5 credits. You could also do the full program, which is 4 weeks long, and earn up to 6 credits. So the weeks are in different locations. The first week you'll be in Nantes. The second and third week you'll be in Paris. And then the fourth week you'll be spending it in Brussels. And during all of those weeks, it'll be a blend of lectures from Audencia professors as well as site visits. So for example, during the time that you're in Paris, you're going to go to the Louvre and go kind of behind the scenes. So you won't be doing the traditional tour, but speaking people who actually work at the museum on what they do. We have a program in Denmark through Copenhagen Business School. This is a program that is anywhere from 3 to 6 credits. This is more like the traditional kind of summer school that you might be familiar with, where you're given a list of 20 different classes that are offered, and you can actually pick which are the classes that interest you most to take during the 6 weeks that you could spend in Copenhagen. So you have the opportunity to take 2 classes over 6 weeks and earn 6 credits, or you could take just 1 class for 3 weeks and earn 3 credits. But again, you're able to choose from a variety of different options. For those of you that have some more time to spend overseas this summer, this is a great opportunity. I did want to highlight that the application deadline for this program is February 1st, so it's actually this Sunday. So that's different from all of our other programs just because they have a higher or a more advanced deadline than our others. But so if you are interested in this opportunity, apply by this Sunday. We also have a partnership with the European Business School located just outside of Frankfurt in Germany. And so they are looking at successful leadership. So we have a lot of programs that are looking at, kind of European business from the French perspective. So you can kind of look at what the perspective is of the other powerhouse in the EU and what the Germans think. So it's, again, a combination of site visits, including Audi and some others, and then lectures from EBS professors. So this program is 3 weeks long, and you'll be earning 3 credits while on this program. Lastly, we have a partnership with Tel Aviv University in Israel. They offer a program called Doing Business in Israel, but really the focus is kind of innovation and entrepreneurship, 2 things that Israel is very well known for. And they arrange 2 weeks of combined lectures and site visits to startups, both startups and more mature companies that are trying to do innovative things in Tel Aviv. And it's 3 credits. And again, these courses are open to anyone from all of their partner institutions, so it's a very diverse group. We have sent students on most of these programs, so if you have any questions, you can definitely let me know. I'm happy to put you in touch with a student who participated in these programs previously. I do want to do one plug because I also am the advisor for our long-term study abroad program. So if you go on an overseas opportunity this summer and found that it was just absolutely great and you want to get a more immersive experience, or there's really an area that you would like to study, particularly in a certain region, you can explore a long-term study abroad option. So this is with top business schools, as I mentioned before. Some of them are listed below. It really does give you exposure to new academic environments and just new ways of doing business. So I'm happy to answer any questions about those opportunities. But to go back to the short-term study abroad, there is an online application. So you will have to complete that in GW Passport. There's a link to that on our website. You also would need to complete the application by 11:59. So the application will shut off on Sunday the 15th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for those of you that might be traveling. And this is something that after that deadline, the faculty or our office will review the applications, and we do make every effort to get back to you within a week of you submitting those applications. Once you do submit the application, if you are admitted to the program, you'll be expected to pay a $500 program deposit. That deposit is credited to your student account. So it's money that you can then use for tuition for the course or the program fee, if there is one for the program. We'll enroll you in the course, and then you'll hear additional information from the faculty or our office to start planning. So the first thing you can do now before you even finish your application is make sure that you can travel overseas, for those of you interested in the study abroad program. So if you don't have a passport, get one. Or if your passport's expired, renew it. If you're an international student, you can talk to me or the ISO just to make sure that you're meeting all the requirements so that you can return to GW afterwards to complete your studies. And then I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, as well as the other faculty members. So there's a couple questions.
if it says that your application is open, but you submitted all the forms, is that normal, or should it?
Yeah, there's no like, you've completed your application. As long as everything's checked off, you're done.
Okay.
Yes. All right.
So 2 questions, because it was just reminded me of one. As far as an interview, would that be fairly clear if we had to do that?
There's only 2 programs that require interviews. So Professor Lamro's program and then Professor Levy's program.
And then second question, I assume, I mean, so like for countries like China and Myanmar, I imagine there might be some kind of visa requirements. So I assume we have enough time in between when we would get the notification of yes and...
Right, yeah. So the idea is that, you know, the week after the 15th, you would be hearing if you've been admitted. And so by then, we give students another week to submit the deposit. So by early March, you would know if you've been admitted to the program, if the program's running, and then we share, you know, kind of information for applying for the visa.
It's about the visa program, and I'm an international student. So, for instance, my visa will expire on May the 1st.
Yeah.
But if I choose to go to France, and maybe I will go back on June or July. So, how to solve this problem?
Yes, so for international students, those that have if your F1 visa is expiring before you travel, you would just need to make sure that while you're overseas, you're renewing your F1 visa, be it in a third party or if you perhaps go back to your home country to renew the F1 visa, and before you return to the U.S. So it doesn't have to be before the study abroad program starts. It just has to be before you come back to the U.S.
Whether I can go back to China directly from France?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Yes.
For the Copenhagen program, when I looked up the courses that were offered, it said that this summer there were none of the 3-week courses. So even if you're only taking 3 credits, you still have to go over the 6 weeks.
So there are some, so we can talk more about that, and I'm happy, if there are particular courses, I'm happy to reach the coordinator, because I do know that in general most students go for the full 6 weeks, but they did say that with some you may be able to, kind of do the last, kind of couple assignments or something remotely, or they would be able to try and work something out. So we can talk more about that. All right. Any others? Well, I want to thank you all for coming. As I said before, there's additional information down here. The faculty and also former participants will be available. We're just outside. There's coffee, so you can caffeinate for those of you who have a 7 o'clock class. There's also treats. We'll feed you for coming, so thank you very much.